The orbital city of Zephyria 9 floated quietly above a green and blue planet, a meeting place where humans and aliens gathered in peace. It was a shining city of steel and glass, full of strange languages, different faces, and quiet rules. Diplomats from all over the galaxy worked here, but emotions were always kept under control. No shouting, no tears, no hugs. To the Volari, this was perfect. They were a highly intelligent alien species who valued logic above all else. They communicated through silent thoughts, cold, clean, and calm. Feelings were dangerous, touch was worse, and humans? They were the most chaotic creatures in the galaxy. So when Ailani, a young Volari, was assigned to work as a personal maid to a human ambassador, everyone was shocked, including her. "This is not a punishment," her elder had said. "This is a test of strength. If you can live among the humans and remain untouched by their emotions, you will bring honor to our kind." Ailani kept her head bowed, hands folded tightly in front of her. "Yes, elder, I will not fail." But inside her heart was heavy. She had read about humans, their laughter, their anger, their loud voices and strange habit of touching each other. Hugs, handshakes, even pats on the back. To the Volari, all of that was dangerous. She arrived at the ambassador's quarters early in the morning. The doors opened with a soft hiss. The inside looked warm, full of soft chairs, glowing lights, and strange round objects called pillows. It was very different from the clean, empty spaces she was used to. Then he entered the room. Ambassador Jack Thorne was tall with dark hair and kind brown eyes. He wore a simple uniform and a smile that looked easy and real. "You must be Ailani," he said warmly. "I've been looking forward to meeting you." She nodded stiffly. "Yes, Ambassador. I am here to serve." He held out his hand. "Please, just Jack is fine." She looked at his hand, unsure. His fingers were open, waiting. Ailani didn't move. After a few seconds, Jack slowly lowered his hand. "No worries," he said gently. "We'll take things slow." There was no anger in his voice, no disappointment, just patience. That surprised her more than anything. Over the next few days, Ailani worked quietly around the ambassador's home. She cleaned the rooms, organized files, and helped prepare tea for his guests. Jack never asked for much, and he always thanked her. She noticed things about him. He hummed when he worked. He talked to himself when solving problems. Sometimes, he laughed at messages on his screen. Once she saw him reading a book with tears in his eyes. He was strange, but he was never cruel. Still, Ailani followed the rules of her people. She kept her distance. She spoke only when needed, and she never ever touched him. One evening, Jack was working late in his study. Ailani brought him a cup of herbal tea. He looked tired with shadows under his eyes. "Thank you," he said, smiling. "You always know what I need." "It is my duty to observe," she replied. He chuckled softly. "You sound like a robot." She blinked. "A robot?" Machines that follow orders exactly without any emotion," he explained. "I'm not a machine," she said firmly. "No, you're not," he said, looking at her seriously. "You're thoughtful. Quiet, yes, but thoughtful. I appreciate that." Ailani wasn't sure how to respond, so she gave a small bow and turned to leave. "Ailani," he said, stopping her. "Have you ever read a book? A human novel?" She turned. "No, Ambassador." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small printed book. "This is called The Little Prince. It's a human story, gentle, poetic. I think you might like it." She hesitated. "Why give it to me?" He shrugged. "Because I believe stories help us understand each other." She accepted the book with both hands. It felt strange, but not unpleasant. That night, in her small quarters, Ailani opened the book and began to read. The words were simple but full of emotion. The story spoke, a friendship of loneliness, of a fox that wanted to be tamed. She didn't understand everything, but something in her chest ached in a way she had never felt before. The next morning, Ailani watched Jack greet a visiting diplomat from the insectoid race Zikarn. The alien was clearly uncomfortable. "Jack," bent down to the diplomat's eye level and used calm tones and slow words. He didn't rush. He didn't show power. He showed kindness. Later, when the diplomat left, Elani asked quietly, "Why do you lower yourself when speaking to the Zikarn?" Jack smiled. "Because they see height as aggression. I want them to feel safe." "You changed your behavior." "For them?" He nodded. "Of course. That's what empathy is. Empathy." She had read the word before, but now she saw it. In the days that followed, Elani began to feel more curious than afraid. She asked small questions. Jack answered them, with stories, about Earth, about music, about how humans cried when they were sad and hugged when they were happy. She listened. She began to think. One afternoon, as she placed a file on his desk, her fingers brushed against his by accident. It was a tiny touch, quick, but her breath caught in her throat. Her mind, trained to recoil, didn't pull back. Jack noticed but said nothing. He only gave her a soft look that wasn't pity. It was respect. That night she didn't sleep. She sat with the book in her hands and thought about the fox. You become responsible for what you have tamed. She didn't know what she was becoming. But she knew she was no longer the same, and for the first time that didn't feel like failure. It felt like a beginning. The days on Zephyria 9 passed like gentle waves, quiet, slow, but full of small changes. Elani still followed her daily duties. She cleaned the rooms, arranged files, and prepared Ambassador Jack's tea exactly the way he liked it, just a little sweet, with one slice of dried fruit. But inside her mind, something had begun to shift. She found herself looking forward to small things. Jack's voice when he greeted her, the soft music he played while working, the smell of human paper in the book he had given her. The book, The Little Prince, had become a secret companion. Elani read it again and again at night. She didn't understand everything, but the emotions in it, sadness, wonder, love, felt real. They filled the silent spaces inside her, places she didn't know had been empty. One morning, Jack walked into the living room carrying a strange round object. "Elani, ever seen a snow globe?" he asked. She looked at it closely. Inside the glass ball was a tiny house surrounded by white trees. When Jack shook it, little flakes floated around like a storm. "It's a memory," he said, smiling. "From Earth. My sister gave it to me." Elani stared at the floating snow. "It looks cold, but beautiful." Jack nodded. That's exactly how it felt. Cold outside, warm inside. Elani thought for a moment. Do humans keep memories in objects? Jack chuckled. Sometimes. We're sentimental like that. She touched the glass gently with one finger. For a moment she saw more than snow. She saw a small human girl laughing, throwing real snow into the air, and a younger Jack chasing her through white fields. Elani pulled her hand back quickly. "I didn't mean to see that." Jack looked surprised, but not upset. "You're telepathic, right? You felt that?" "Yes," she said quietly. "It was unexpected, but not painful." Jack didn't say anything for a moment. Then he said softly, "You don't have to be afraid of what you feel." Her eyes widened. "But we were taught that emotion is dangerous, that feelings can break a mind." He leaned back in his chair. "Feelings can be messy, yes, but they can also heal. They can connect people. That's why I share my memories." Elani didn't answer, but something inside her stirred. Later that week, she was invited to join Jack on a diplomatic visit to the Osari, a bird-like species who valued songs and stories. The meeting was important, and Jack asked Elani to sit beside him, not as a servant but as a quiet observer. As the Osari ambassador sang a welcome song, Elani closed her eyes and listened. The melody was slow and sorrowful. Her thoughts touched the emotions behind the song: loneliness, hope, longing. She didn't block them this time. She let them flow through her like wind over water. After the meeting, Jack smiled at her. You looked peaceful. I felt open, she said honestly. Back at the ambassador's residence, Elani sat by the window watching the stars through the transparent wall. She could feel Jack nearby, reading on the couch. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was calm. Then, without thinking, she asked, Do you ever feel lonely, Jack? He looked up, surprised. Yes, sometimes. Even with people around, I miss Earth. I miss my sister, my home. Why don't you return? He smiled gently. Because this mission matters. Peace between species matters. I can handle the loneliness if it helps others live without fear. Elani nodded slowly. You're brave. Jack chuckled. Or maybe just stubborn. Elani tilted her head. What is stubborn? Jack laughed again. I'll explain it later. That night, Elani dreamed for the first time in many cycles. In her dream, she stood in a field of white snow, and someone held her hand. It was warm, not frightening. The next morning, she received a message from the Valari Council. Your mental readings are unstable. You are invited back for correction. Emotional balance is required. Her hands trembled as she read it. Jack noticed her pale face. Something wrong? Elani showed him the message. They believe I am corrupted. Jack frowned. They think you're broken because you feel? She nodded. They will perform a correction. It will remove all emotional influence. I will forget everything I learned here. For the first time, Jack looked angry. That's not right. You've grown so much. You're not broken. You're alive. Elani felt fear rise in her chest. But I must obey. Jack reached out, then paused. Can I touch your hand? Elani hesitated. Then slowly, she placed her hand in his. Their fingers touched. Her mind expected pain, but there was none. Only warmth, calm, and something soft. Like peace. I don't want to lose this, she whispered. Then don't, Jack said. You have a choice. But did she? The next day, she traveled alone to the Valari sector. Her people stood in silence, their minds closed and cold. The correction chamber was ready. You are not yourself, the elder said. Human closeness has poisoned your thoughts. This process will return you to your pure state. Elani looked at the chamber, then at her reflection in the glass wall. She saw not a servant, not a silent Valari, but a person. Someone who had learned, changed, grown. I refuse, she said clearly. Gasps echoed in the minds of the Valari. Refusal is exile. Elani stood tall. Then I will walk my own path. She left without looking back. When she returned to Jack's residence, he opened the door before she could knock. His eyes searched her face. I said no, she said simply. They have cut me from the Valari mind. I am alone now. Jack smiled, relief in his eyes. You're not alone. Not anymore. She stepped inside. Everything felt the same, but also new. This time she wasn't a maid. She was a person making her own choices. After leaving the Valari sector, Elani was no longer the same. She had been part of the Valari mind network since birth. Every thought, every decision, every feeling had been shared. Now she was cut off, alone in her own thoughts. A quiet space that once felt cold now felt wide and open. Scary but also free. Ambassador Jack Thorne welcomed her back without question. He didn't ask what happened in the chamber. He only said, You're home. Whatever you need, just tell me. That word, home, stayed with Elani. Jack gave her a new room, larger than before with soft lights and a window facing the stars. She filled it with simple things. Her earth book, the snow globe, and a small plant Jack gave her as a gift. This is a peace lily, he explained. It needs care, but it's strong. Like her, she thought. But life on Zephyria 9 didn't pause. Diplomats came and went. Political tensions rose. Jack's work grew heavier, and he often worked late into the night. Elani no longer served him as a maid. Now she sat beside him during important meetings, offering advice from both human and Valeri points of view. One afternoon, a crisis arrived. The Orcs, a strong but proud alien species, accused the Renari of breaking a trade agreement. Warships began to gather near their shared border. The Galactic Council feared the start of a new war. Jack was chosen to lead the peace talks. "It's going to be hard," he told Elani as they walked through the garden halls of the diplomatic center. "Both sides feel wronged. One mistake could make things worse." "I will help," Elani said. "I understand the Rhinari mind structure. They use emotion carefully. The Korax respond only to direct truth." Jack smiled. "That's why I need you." The meeting room was filled with tension. The Korax leader, tall and armored, sat stiffly. The Renari delegate, thin and graceful, looked tired. Words were sharp. Accusations flew across the table like sparks. Then Elani stood. "Please," she said calmly. "May I speak not just with words, but with empathy?" The room fell silent. Even Jack turned to her in surprise. The Valeri had never offered emotional mediation before. It was unheard of. But Elani walked to the center of the room, placed her hands on the table, and closed her eyes. She didn't speak through voice. She reached out gently, one mental thread to each delegate. She let them feel not her thoughts, but the quiet emotions inside her: peace, understanding, the sadness of exile, and the hope of connection. At first, both delegates resisted. But then, the Korax leader's shoulders dropped slightly. The Rhinari's eyes softened. They didn't agree, not yet, but something important had happened. They had listened. After the session, Jack looked at Elani with deep respect. "You just did what the Valeri said was impossible," he whispered. "You used emotion to heal." She smiled softly. "Maybe that is the true strength of my kind. Not silence, but the choice to feel." But not everyone agreed. The next day, Elani received a warning message from a secret Valeri group. Not the High Council, but a younger generation. "We saw what you did. Some of us, we are curious, but others see you as dangerous. Be careful." She stared at the message for a long time. That night, Jack found her sitting on a bench, looking up at the stars. "You okay?" he asked. "There are others like me," she said. "Some support me, some fear me." Jack sat beside her. "Change always feels dangerous at first, but the fact that some of them are listening, that means you're making a difference." She looked at him. "Do you think I made a mistake leaving my people?" He shook his head. "I think you were brave. You didn't run away from who you were. You ran toward who you could become." Silence settled between them, soft and kind. Elani's eyes slowly met Jack's. "I used to fear human closeness," she said quietly. "Now I don't know what I would do without it." Jack smiled. "That's the most human thing I've ever heard." She laughed gently. A sound that surprised even her, but the peace didn't last. A few days later, Elani was called to attend a special council meeting, this time not as a maid or an assistant, but as a speaker. The Galactic Council wanted to hear her point of view. Could emotional diplomacy become part of future negotiations? It was an honor, but it was also risky. If she said the wrong thing, her words could be used against her, not just by her own kind, but by others who still distrusted humans. Jack helped her prepare. He guided her through the talking points, showed her how to breathe slowly, and reminded her, "Just speak the truth you've lived." Before entering the chamber, Elani touched the snow globe one more time. She shook it gently, watching the flakes dance inside. "Cold outside, warm inside," she whispered. "I understand now." Then she walked into the council chamber. It was large, with curved seats rising in tall rows. Beings of all shapes and colors watched her from above. She stood in the center, small and alone, but not afraid. She spoke in clear, calm words. I was raised to believe emotions were dangerous. That closeness was a threat. But then I met a human, and I learned something different. I learned that emotions, when shared with care, can build bridges stronger than any logic. She looked up at the council. I do not speak for all Valari, I speak only for myself. But if we want peace across the stars, we must learn to feel, not just to think. There was silence when she finished. Then, a single delegate clapped. Then, another and another. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. Back in Jack's residence, Elani stood by the window. Jack joined her, holding 2 cups of tea. You did it, he said. You made them feel something. I didn't think I could, she admitted. But you did, he said. You're not just a maid anymore. No, she said softly. I'm something else now. They stood in silence, side by side. Somewhere deep inside her, Ilani felt something warm growing. It wasn't fear, it wasn't doubt. It was the beginning of belonging. The next cycle on Zephyria 9 began with soft lights blinking over the city's silver towers. From her new window, Elani watched the sunrise spill gold across the distant planet. It felt like a gentle promise, a day without fear. Yet inside the diplomatic center, tension stirred again. The trade crisis between the Korax and the Renari was calmer, but far from solved. Patrol ships still faced one another along the border. One spark could undo months of careful words. A new role because of her speech, the Galactic Council asked Elani to serve as an emotional liaison, a test position never tried before. She would sit beside the main negotiators, reading undercurrents, a feeling that ordinary translators missed. With her Valeri insight and her new human empathy, she could turn icy silence into progress. Ambassador Jack Thorne met her outside the Grand Debate Hall. He held 2 badges, one for him, one for her. Ready to change the galaxy, partner? He asked. She took the badge, fingers brushing his for just a heartbeat. The old fear no longer rose. Instead, she felt steady warmth. I will try, she said, pinning the badge to her robe. First contact with doubt inside, the Korax General Drogon's score paced like a caged storm beast. Heavy plates of armor clinked with every step. Across the table, the Renari envoy Salis Vare folded slender wings tight against her back, voice calm, but eyes sharp. Jack opened proceedings with formal greetings. Then Elani leaned forward, speaking softly, yet clearly. General Drogon, I sense you fear a loss of honor if you stand down first. Envoy Salis, I feel your worry that your people will starve if trade stays closed. She paused, letting the words settle. You both guard your worlds but also your pride. Could we build a bridge that protects pride on both sides? The room stilled. The Korax general frowned, surprised that an outsider named emotions he tried to hide. The Renari envoy's wings loosened a fraction. Salis spoke first. Honor sits in our hearts too, General. We never wish to shame the Korax, only to feed our children. Drogon's jaw tightened. Then he gave the smallest nod. Perhaps a compromised transport corridor guarded by both fleets. The corner of Jack's mouth lifted. A spark of hope flickered. Teaching empathy. After the session, reporters crowded the hall. An avian journalist chirped. Valari, how does it feel? To break your own species' laws, Elani answered simply. It feels like stepping from shadow into light. That quote traveled across the interstellar networks within hours. Some called her a hero, others a traitor. Messages flooded the ambassador's channel. Thank yous, threats, questions. Jack filtered the worst of them, but Elani insisted on reading a few. One short note from a young Valari cadet made her eyes sting. I watched the council broadcast in secret. I felt your courage like a warm breeze. Teach us how to live unafraid. She typed back, hands trembling slightly. Courage begins with a single breath. Start there, and you are already changing. A lesson in music. That evening, Jack invited Elani to a small lounge where human officers relaxed after shifts. Soft guitar music drifted in the air. The performer, Lieutenant Maya Cheng, smiled when Jack asked for one special song. "This piece," he whispered to Elani, "helped Earth. Survivors heal after the Europa disaster. Listen for the rise and fall. It mimics a beating heart." Elani closed her eyes. The melody began low, almost like mourning, then climbed with trembling notes. At the peak, the sound opened wide, bright and free, before settling into a calm rhythm. She felt a wave inside her chest. Sorrow, hope, relief, all braided together. When the final chord faded, Elani discovered tears on her cheeks. Jack offered a small cloth. "Music is emotion given wings," he said. "I never knew sound could hold so much," she whispered. Lieutenant Maya approached. "Would you like to try? One single strum?" Elani touched the guitar strings with uncertain fingers. The soft vibration traveled up her arm, tickling her mind. For a blink, she shared the human memory of crowded streets rebuilding after tragedy, hands lifting beams, voices singing through dust. She gasped, half laughing, half crying. "Thank you," she told Maya. "Your music teaches hearts to breathe." Sabotage. In the shadows, progress bred resistance. 2 nights later, alarms blared through the diplomatic quarter. Jack rushed into the hall, Elani close behind. Smoke curled under a door marked "Secure Comms." Inside, a small incendiary device hissed, charring, datapads that held the latest peace draft. Security sealed the fire quickly, but the damage was clear. Without those records, talks would reset to anger and suspicion. Elani knelt by the blackened floor, placing her palm over the still warm metal. Closing her eyes, she reached for residual emotion. Not from flames, but from the saboteur. A flash flooded her mind, cold resolve, a sense of righteous duty, and the echo of a Valari prayer. She opened her eyes, shaking. "Someone from my own species did this," she said quietly. "Someone who fears what we are building." Jack's face hardened. "We'll find them. But first we salvage tomorrow's session." Rebuilding with Feelings night stretched into morning while teams recreated destroyed documents. Elani offered not just memory but feeling, matching each clause to the intent she sensed when delegates first spoke. Jack called it emotional watermarking, an invisible signature of trust. By dawn, a provisional treaty lay ready again. At the meeting, Elani addressed both sides before handing over the rebuilt text. "Last night, fear tried to burn this agreement," she said. "Fear failed because hope woke earlier and worked harder." General Drogan rumbled what passed for a laugh. Envoy Celis folded her wings in approval. They signed the new draft and, history marked it, traded a first respectful bow. Echoes. Across minds that success ignited a quiet revolution. Messages now poured not only to Elani but to the Galactic Council. Requests for more emotional liaisons. Young Valari hid in communication booths, practicing small exercises Elani posted on an open channel. Simple steps like naming one feeling each morning, or sharing a safe memory with a friend. The High Council of her people remained silent, but rumors said they argued all night behind closed walls. Old certainties cracked. One evening, Elani received a private call. The face of Elder Sereth, once her harshest critic, appeared on screen, expression unreadable. "You have shaken our pillars," Sereth stated. Elani steadied her voice. "Pillars that cannot bend will break." "Perhaps." The elder's gaze softened a fraction. "Send us your exercises, not publicly. Send them to me." When the call ended, Elani leaned back, stunned. Jack poured 2 cups of tea. "Progress?" he asked. "Maybe the first true step," she replied, wonder lighting her eyes. A growing bond late that night, the wide corridor near their rooms lay quiet. Jack and Elani walked side by side, footsteps echoing softly. They stopped by a large viewport. The starfield shimmered, endless. "Do you miss Earth?" Elani asked. "Every sunrise," Jack admitted. "But then I think, If I were home, I wouldn't have met you." She studied his profile, the faint lines of worry, the steady kindness. Her heart beat faster, not from fear anymore, but from something new and bright. "I once feared any touch," she said, voice barely above a breath. "Now the thought of losing this closeness frightens me more." Jack turned toward her. "Elani, you have given me hope I didn't know I needed." For a moment, they simply stood, the vast galaxy there, witness. She reached out, no hesitation, and laced her fingers with his. The contact felt natural, right? No words followed. None were needed. Seeds for tomorrow. The next morning, a formal invitation arrived from the Galactic Council. Create a pilot group called the Emotional Diplomacy Corps. Jack would command its strategic wing. Elani would design its training, teaching ambassadors of every species the language of feeling. She read the proposal twice, hand trembling in the best way. Jack knocked on her office door. "Well?" She looked up, eyes shining. "We said we wanted to help the stars breathe. Now they're handing us the lungs." He laughed, pure joy ringing through the room. "Then let's teach them to sing." Closing the day that night, Elani watered the peace lily. New buds peeked from green leaves, proof that gentle care wins over sterile perfection. She placed the snow globe beside it and shook it once. Flakes whirled around the tiny house, cold outside, warm inside. Just like Zephyria 9, just like her own heart. Elani whispered into the quiet, "Tomorrow we build a future where no species fears a kind hand." Outside her window, the first star of evening blinked as if in agreement. The spaceport of Zephyria 9 buzzed with new energy. Large banners floated across the halls showing the symbol of the Emotional Diplomacy Corps, 2 hands, 1 alien, 1 human, reaching toward each other over a circle of stars. Elani stood, on the platform of the central hall, her white robe glowing under the soft lights. She no longer wore the badge of a maid. Today she wore the colors of a leader, a guide, a symbol of change. She looked around the grand chamber filled with hundreds of beings, humans, Valari, Renari, Korax, Osari, and more. They had come from all corners of the galaxy for one reason: to witness the start of a new era. She glanced to her right. Ambassador Jack Thorne stood proudly beside her, dressed in dark blue with golden trim. His eyes met hers and gave a small nod. His quiet strength gave her courage. She took a deep breath. Then she stepped forward to speak. A voice that once feared speaking. "I stand before you," Elani began, "not as a perfect example, but as a living question." The room went silent. "I was born Valari. I was taught that emotions were a weakness, that closeness would break my mind, that humans were dangerous because they touched, they laughed, they cried." She paused. Her eyes scanned the crowd. "And yet, when I was placed among humans, I found something different. I found that emotions are not wild storms. They are light, heat, music, and strength. They connect, they heal, they change." A low hum of agreement moved through the crowd. "I am no longer part of the Valari Mind Network," she continued. "But I am not alone. I found a new way to connect, not through silent thought, but shared feeling. I invite you to try this. Way with me?" Applause broke out, starting with a few hands, then growing into thunder. Even the tall Korax general gave a sharp nod. The Rhinari diplomat raised her wings in approval. Elani smiled softly and stepped back. Jack leaned close and whispered, "You just made history." She whispered back, "We made it together." The training begins weeks passed quickly as the Emotional Diplomacy Corps, EDC, began its work. Elani designed programs with simple but powerful steps, listening circles, where different species shared stories without judgment, memory mirrors where diplomats used safe emotional exercises to understand each other's pasts, touch trust exercises, carefully guided to help species who feared physical closeness learn gentle contact, starting with a hand on the shoulder, or shared objects like music instruments and writing tools. Some were skeptical at first. The Valari delegate sent to observe refused to sit near anyone for the first few days. But Elani patiently invited them to each session without pressure. On the 6th day, the Valari sat in a circle and whispered a single sentence. "I miss the warmth I've never known." It was enough. More joined. The circle grew. A gift from the past one quiet evening, Elani returned to her room and found a small package waiting. There was no sender's name, only a symbol of a folded wing. Inside the box was a memory crystal, a traditional Valari object used to store pure emotion. She held it in her palm and closed her eyes. A soft voice played in her mind. "We judged you too quickly, but your courage became our mirror. I cannot return your past, but I offer this, a thread of pride from the world you left. May you feel our respect, even from afar." Tears welled in her eyes. For the first time, her people had not sent orders, warnings, or silence. They had sent respect. She placed the crystal next to her snow globe and her plant, now grown tall and full of blossoms. A choice of names. At the next council event, a representative stood up and asked Elani a question that caught her by surprise. "What do we call you now?" the ambassador asked. "You are no longer just Valari. You are no longer just a maid. What name do you choose for the galaxy to know you by?" Elani looked at Jack, who gave her a small, knowing smile. He already knew her answer. She turned back to the crowd and said, "I choose the name Hope. It is what I was given by those who accepted me. It is what I now give to others." The name echoed through the room like light passing through glass, clear, simple, beautiful. From that day on, she was called Elani Hope. One final mission. A few months later, Elani and Jack were invited to lead peace talks on a far-off colony, where two human groups had been in conflict for years. It wasn't an alien war. It was human against human, torn by old pain, broken trust, and stubborn silence. Some said Elani shouldn't go. "It's not your world," they said. "Let humans handle human problems." But Elani replied, "Pain is not bound by species, neither is healing." She and Jack traveled together to the cold, dusty planet. They met farmers and miners, children and elders. Many looked tired, some angry, others silent. For 2 weeks they listened. Elani sat with the children and shared stories from Earth and Zephyria 9. She showed them how to draw emotions with colors: blue for peace, red for fear, green for hope. The children filled the walls with soft pictures of stars, bridges, and people holding hands. Jack spoke with leaders. He reminded them of Earth's long history of rebuilding. "We all fall apart," he said, "but we're also very good at starting over." One evening, Elani invited both leaders to sit beside her fire. She passed them cups of warm spiced tea and told them the story of the little prince. When she reached the part about the fox and the meaning of being tamed, of becoming important to someone, they both fell quiet. Then the older leader whispered, "We forgot we used to be friends. It was a beginning, and sometimes a beginning is all that's needed." Full circle back on Zephyria 9. Months later, Elani stood at the edge of the garden near the observatory. She looked up at the stars, each one like a heartbeat in the sky. Jack joined her holding 2 cups of tea. "Hard to believe how far this all started," he said, smiling. "You, a quiet maid afraid of handshakes. Me, a tired ambassador hoping not to mess up." She laughed, gently nudging his shoulder. "You still mess up?" He grinned. "True, but now I have you to balance me." They sipped their tea in silence, their fingers touching slightly where the cups met. Elani looked at her peace lily, now planted in the soil of the garden and blooming for all to see. "I used to think closeness was something to fear," she said softly. "Now I know. It is something to build. Slowly, gently, but forever." Jack nodded. "So, what's next?" She smiled at him. Then she turned her gaze toward the stars. "Next, we teach the stars to listen." And they stood together in the quiet night, No longer ambassador and maid, but two hearts side by side, shaping the galaxy with trust, kindness, and something stronger than fear. Hope.